Let's move to another prospect that Oklahoma is very high on, or two, really, skill players. One athlete, Gentry Williams, and the other running back, Raleek Brown, who is settled into his position, who made the transfer to modern day, and he took a slip in the latest rankings, but he's a top 25 kiddo. And then Gentry Williams from Booker T in my hometown at number 9, I think he was at 8 when the last time the rankings came out, has an opportunity to be special on either side of the ball. And I think he's going to move away from playing quarterback this year at Booker T, but we'll wait and see on that. What's your feeling about those two guys as prospects? Because I know we talked about Raleek quite a bit on the podcast, but I don't think we've dug into Gentry so much.
Yeah, we have plenty of Raleek Brown dialogue if our listeners want to scroll back, but I'm sure we'll get to it even more as the thing goes along. As far as Gentry goes, obviously I deal with more of the Texas guys, but Gentry is an individual who, no matter where I go in the state of Oklahoma, I hear about the kid. And that, to me, is something that really stands out because I liken that. And look, I'm a young guy. I haven't been around the OK prep scene for a minute. But for me, the guy that I always heard about was Dax Hill. And so when I liken the amount of times that the name Gentry Williams is in my ear to Dax Hill, that tells me that this guy is Canton's talent. And then you put on the film and you say to yourself, oh, yeah, no wonder why everyone's talking about him, because he's an electric athlete, and that's why he's literally labeled an athlete. This guy can do whatever you ask him to do on the football field. You mentioned that he plays quarterback. A lot of people see him as a corner. I bet you could play safety or wide receiver. I mean, the guy can just go wherever and succeed at a high level, and that's why it's huge at this stage that Oklahoma's leading in the crystal ball. This kid's been on campus in the past. He is someone that is such a high-profile name in the state of Oklahoma that it seems like it's a must-get. But, man, I mean, take everything out and you just turn on the tape or you just listen to what people say about him. Gentry is a next-level player that Oklahoma has to get in the mix. And for him to be inside the top 10, I think it's well-deserved. I think it's great for the state of Oklahoma. They have a top 10 caliber talent to be recognized as this recruiting process goes on.
I look at Gentry Williams and I see a kiddo that's going to have to make a decision. Not necessarily about playing offense or defense. I know that many people project him as a defensive back. I could see him playing wide receiver, slot, just a guy that you want to get the ball in the hands of. The kind of athlete that you've talked about with Dax Hill, though he's faster than Dax. And that's really what I'm getting at. Dax Hill's a 4.4, 40-yard dash guy. He can go 4.3. You know, he's actually disappointed that he doesn't run faster at sometimes. Also was the defensive rookie of the year and really Michigan's rookie of the year for the Wolverines last year as a safety bursting onto the scene. Gentry has the opportunity to run in the next Olympic Games. He's that good. I've never seen a true freshman win a large school state title in the 400 meters the way I saw him do it. You know, kid can just fly. 47-second 400-meter dash as a 14-year-old kid might as well be 44 seconds in the Olympics. He's that fast. He just needs to develop and he needs time, right? And he needs really to commit to that being his sport. If he tried to pull a Xavier Carter, if he tries to pull a Trendon Holiday, I think he's going to short himself on both ends, right? He's going to have to choose football or track and field, I think. I could be proven wrong, but in my estimation, Chuba Hubbard ran in the World Finals as a youth, and he picked football. You know, Tyreek Hill is famously fast. He picked football. I think that at some point, Gentry's going to have to make a decision because, like Gil Roberts coming out of Millwood, he could have played football. He chose to run track at Texas Tech. He's pretty doggone good at it. So that's what interests me most about Williams is the real first world athlete problem he's going to have about what am I going to play? Am I going to play offense? Am I going to play defense? Am I going to try to go both ways? Am I going to run track?
Yeah, and I think it's a great point to bring up. I can't remember. I think it was either Jeff Demps or Chris Rainey back at Florida, one of those two running backs that had Olympic-level speed,
Demps
ended up running for the U.S. national team after a pretty good run in college as a football player. So maybe you can do both, just separate them. My thing for Gentry is, look, I think he's a naturally gifted runner, like you're mentioning. I also want to dive into a little bit more of what you're talking about if he goes the football route, which I think is obviously on the table. The offense versus defense thing, we've talked about it already. The guy can do whatever you ask him to. in my opinion, this recruitment is going to be very eye-opening just for me and for maybe a lot of fans in the recruiting world, because we talk about Lincoln Riley, okay? That offense is just otherworldly. You see videos that are put out by Urban Meyer or what have you, breaking down the X's and O's, and you got Reggie Bush on the air saying, if I am a high school football recruit and I'm going to pick the offense that I'm going to be a part of, I have to be a part of this one. I have to. But then you go off of that, and now there's another selling point on the flip side of the football with the speed D of Alex Grinch. So with both sides being so attractive to a recruit, and then being someone like a Gentry Williams who can do whatever and do it at a high level, in my opinion, I need to see if these Oklahoma coaches are going to allow him to do both on the football field. You may not be able to do both in terms of football and track, but if you're going to take one away, you might as well let the kid go all in on just one. And so I think like how they handled DJ Graham, the young freshman coming in from Keller, who we've talked about it. I watched this kid on offense, defense, and special teams destroy who was ever in front of him. How they handle him as maybe a prototype could be what we see from Gentry Williams down the line. I need to know if Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch are going to make this thing work and they are committed to win a national championship. Is it not about, at the end of the day, getting your best 11 on the field? And in my opinion, it doesn't matter what side it is. Gentry Williams is certainly one of the best 11. I feel like they should give him the keys to play both sides. What do you say?
I think it's going to be an interesting pitch, man. I think if I'm picking, it gets simple for me. I'm going to make more money as an offensive player. I'm going to look better as an offensive player. I am already going to join a prolific offense, and I'll be joining a defense that's on the way back, but is by no means elite. And if I want the challenge of turning around something, cool, that's great. But in my experience, you want to be a part of an enormously awesome system. You don't want to be, unless you're the quarterback, the guy that is responsible for turning a thing around, right? I think that's one of the reasons why Dax Hill didn't end up at Oklahoma. You know, not to say that Michigan is that much better, but he gets to go to a place where he's known as a 5-star. He's not known as Dax Hill. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think Gentry Williams would be very much the same. So if you wanted to play offense and he just kind of was like, I would like to play both, but if I had to pick, I play offense, give him more offensive snaps than defensive snaps, and then just see how it goes. Because in my experience, trying to make a kid into an offensive lineman that doesn't want to play offensive line is difficult. Trying to make a kid into a safety that wants to be a wide receiver is difficult. If he doesn't really want that and doesn't have the passion to be in both meeting rooms at the same time, to learn both sides of the ball at the same time, to work twice as hard as everybody else at the same time for maybe even half the snaps, then I would ask him to pick a side. Because, yeah, it'd be fun for you and I to cover that because it would be remarkable to watch play out. But from the workload aspect of it and from what he's going to be asked to do by both Riley and Grinch, I have a hard time really putting that on a kid that just isn't built 100% the right way to withstand that workload, that amount of coaching, and frankly, that locker room. Because you also have to be the kind of guy that everybody likes. Because if you come off even a little bit like a prima donna, it ain't going to go well. And you'll wash out sooner rather than later. So I would ask him to pick a side, and if you pick wide receiver, I would say thank you. If you pick safety or corner, I would say thank you. But I would not want to put on him playing both ways. I'd want him to be all in on that and give him as much latitude as possible. I
think it's a safe point as well. I just want to quickly say, I should quickly mention that I'm not saying force the kid to play, but I need to see if the staff is willing enough to, if he wants to, allow the kid to play both. I just felt like that's important to say.
No, it's true. And it really is important to say because, you know, the same thing was floated with Jadeveon Clowney at South Carolina when Steve Spurrier was recruiting him. And, Jadeveon Clowney said, I'm a running back. He says, no, big boy. Your hands on the ground. No, big boy. And, I think he's the highest rated player ever, in the rankings era. And if that guy isn't able to go both ways, and looking at college football in particular, the guys that go both ways since Charles Woodson haven't really fared all that great. I mean, Jabril Peppers is an outstanding player, but we only knew him as a guy that played both ways. We didn't know him as a wide receiver. We didn't know him as a safety. He returned kicks. Like Derek Stingley Jr. is probably going to try to play both ways this fall for LSU. And he was told by Ed Orgeron, I'm not playing you both ways as a true freshman because your dad asked me not to. But when I read this quote, like in October, about him going both ways in the sophomore, I'm like, okay, on certain situations, I could totally see that. But I also don't want to burn the kid out, and I want him sharp at corner. I want him to be the best cornerback in the country, and that's hard enough to do. He's already returning kicks as a true freshman too, man. He's their punt returner. Mm-hmm. And obviously Ed Orgeron is open to it, right? Obviously Bo Pelini would have to be, or he wouldn't get the job. Scott Linehan would have to be, or he wouldn't get the job. Ensminger's already on because he was here last year. But that's how I look at these things. I say, okay, what is the best case scenario for a kid that goes both ways? Charles Woodson, is that it? Oh, Charles Woodson ended up playing defensive back in the league because there's more of a priority put on trying to get that kind of guy, even as that kind of guy doesn't actually make the money and isn't going to be leading your poster, right? Like, could Odell Beckham Jr. have been an outstanding corner? You betcha. Would he have made as much money, or would we know his name in the same way that we know it now? No, man. Like, I would submit to you, Colin, who's the best NFL cornerback today? And then you don't have to have a right answer. Just who do you think?
Best NFL cornerback today. That's a tough question to ask. Here's what I'll say. I'll say off the top, I think when you look at the guy that just got paid the most money, in Mr. Byron Jones, that's because that guy's been playing DB for a minute, and he's such a naturally gifted athlete. He poured that athleticism into that lone position.
Right. So he got 5 years, $82 million from the Dolphins after playing some safety and then moving to corner. I would also throw Chris Harris into this conversation. I know he's aging, but, also Bixby stand up. I look at that and I see 5 years, $82 million. Okay, cool. Amari Cooper just got 5 years, $100 million. And would people be able to pick Amari Cooper out of a lineup? Probably. Can they pick out Byron Jones? Like you and I can, but we're also nuts.
We're also Cowboys fans.
Well,
watch that guy shut people down.
Right. Well, and even take it to the Chargers. Can you pick out Derwin James or can you pick out Keenan Allen? Can you pick out Chris Harris or can you pick out Melvin Gordon? And Melvin Gordon.
Melvin Gordon. Yeah,
that's what I'm getting at. Like, the prestige is always going to be on the offensive side of the ball because football is skewed toward offensive football.